Last Blundstone video, we did the 500s. This time we're gonna do the 550s. They're like $10 to $20 more. So we'll kind of break them down to see maybe where that price difference comes from. Cut these in half, see if there's anything else inside. And also Blundstone reached out after the first video and answered some questions that we'll get to in a second. This will also be the 10th pair of boots that I will cut apart on YouTube, just cresting over $2,000 worth of footwear cut in half in the name of science and curiosity, but mostly curiosity. Also, Toaster, as you can tell, sometimes is really needy and sometimes he doesn't want to be on camera at all. Today he's super needy. So to celebrate 10 pairs of footwear cut in half, on Friday I'm going to post an ASMR super cut of all the different boots being cut in half, all the extended footage of all of them. It's going to be like 30 minutes of just straight ear tickling boot cut in half destruction. So be on the lookout for that. Now to the boots. So first we're going to talk about what the boots are, and then we'll talk about my initial wear impressions. Then we'll talk about some of the differences. Then we'll go over some of the details and some of the info Blundstone sent me. Then we'll cut them in half and kind of analyze what some of the differences are on the inside. These are the 550 boots. They're $10 more at $195 as compared to the $185 that the 500 boots are. This is their walnut brown. It's a little bit more brown than their stout brown in their 500s. It's got the leather lining in it. One thing that I missed in the previous video, which, forgive me, I was really sick. I just assumed they were made in Tasmania because it says on the little pull tab, but they're actually made overseas, or I guess, yeah, overseas for Australia as well. So the 500s are made in Thailand. The 550s are made in Vietnam, which is really interesting. You'd think they'd be made in the same factory, but I think there's a big quality difference between these two, which we'll get into more, and especially once we get them cut in half. So Thailand, Vietnam, which, you know, it's kind of a bummer because I thought these were made in Australia, which is my fault for not doing the research. It's always kind of a bummer when you see companies move their production overseas because usually their quality drops. But so far I've heard lots of good things about these, especially in the comment section of the previous video. A lot of people still said they're really great quality. You know, it is what it is. I'd love to see them made in Australia or Tasmania or wherever, but you know, it is what it is. Now to my initial wear impression. These are super comfy. My last video, I didn't wear them at all, but these 550s are so freaking comfy. I wore them the first day, like 16 hours straight, and a lot of walking around the shop on hard concrete, and at the end of the day, they're more comfortable than the other boots that I wear every day, especially the Doc Martens that I've been wearing. So super impressed with the initial impression. I can't speak for the longevity of the comfort, but for the first 3 or 4 days when I was wearing these, super comfy. Actually, I was gonna wear these for only like 1 or 2 days, but they were so comfy, I just kept wearing them. So you got like 3 or 4 days worth of wear on these. So now to the kind of the differences between these boots. I noticed right off the bat is these 500s are just a little bit thinner than the 550s. They're about 1/4 of an inch thinner at the sole, which is not that big of a difference, but I did notice it when I had one on one foot versus one on the other. These have a little bit more slim profile. These ones are a little bit more roomy for the toes. The leather is obviously a big difference, and we'll talk about that with some of the info that Blundstone sent us. But this is a cheaper leather. You can see the bluing on the inside. This seems to be a higher quality leather where it's tanned all the way through, or re-tanned all the way through, or dyed all the way through. It feels very similar. They're both a aniline leather according to Blundstone. One thing that a lot of people notice is there's a stitch line right here on the 550s that's not on the 500s. I don't really know why that's the case. It's kind of odd that they would do that. It makes a little bit more sense knowing that they're coming from 2 different countries and 2 different factories. You know, maybe the equipment setup's slightly different. I don't think there's a really big quality difference between the two. I wouldn't be concerned having a seam there or not having a seam there. Another quick thing is there's double stitching on the heel portion of the 550s, and the 500s only have 1 row of stitching. Next thing I noticed was the TPU on the sole, which is the bottom part that's the harder, more firm rubber, looks like it's a lot thicker on the 550s as compared to the 500s. We won't know for sure until we get them cut in half, but the initial impression is that this is a thinner TPU, and this one has a thicker TPU. You can see it kind of rises up a little bit. And then obviously the 550s are lined with some leather, and the 500s are not. So not a huge difference between the two, just a few minor differences. The only thing that's a big difference is potentially the leather. So that kind of brings us to what Blundstone emailed me about. So after some potential criticisms and thoughts and questions raised in the previous video of the 500s, Blundstone reached out and answered some questions, and I asked them some additional questions. I asked them about the leather. They said the leather is not dyed through on the originals, the 500s, providing that the raw edge of the leather as toast, please. Providing the raw edge of the leather. See, you guys think it's real cute when he's on camera, but this is what I deal with when he's on camera. He just wants all the attention in the world. Okay, providing the raw edge of the leather as per the elastic and gusset region of the footwear. This look is synonymous with Blundstone and has no implications on the specifications or performance of the footwear itself. So they're basically saying the bluing and the leather quality and my questions with the bluing has no effect on the quality of the leather. Anytime you see bluing in a leather, it's not gonna be a great sign. I would always lean towards a higher quality leather that has the dye or the tanning all the way through. We went over this in the leather video, but is there a huge difference between the two leathers? Probably not. You're kind of splitting hairs when it comes to these two qualities of leather, because 550s don't seem to be like a really great quality leather. It's a decent leather. The 500s are slightly worse than that. So, you know, it's not a huge difference. I personally would prefer to have the leather dyed all the way through. It looks more finished. You know, it's just a better quality leather. But to their point, I don't think it's a huge issue when it comes to quality. The soles will wear out long before the leather does. You know, that's one of the issues with not having a Goodyear welted shoe or, you know, anything that can be resold. And toaster's sitting on my paper again. I need this, thank you. Okay, this is the most interesting thing. Hydrolysis. A lot of people complain in the comment section that if you let these boots sit in a closet for a really long time, allegedly they start kind of crumbling and falling apart. So I asked them about that, and to their credit, which, you know, Blundstone didn't have to reach out and they didn't have to answer all the questions and they didn't have to address some of the more potentially damning questions, but they did. So shout out to Blundstone. I think that a lot of companies wouldn't do that, especially to a little teeny YouTube channel like mine. I was really impressed with that. So back to the hydrolysis. Our boots are open cell polyurethane, PU, in the soling material. The PU is made up of thousands of little air bubbles. This gives it a soft cushion feeling underfoot. When the footwear is not worn for a considerable length of time, moisture builds up within the air pockets and causes a gradual breakdown of the soles. This condition is known as hydrolysis. We provide care instructions on the swing tags attached to the footwear, advising to wear the footwear on a regular basis. Hydrolysis does not occur when the boots are worn regularly, as the moisture is pushed out of the air pockets. The industry does not regard this as a manufacturing fault, but is related to the age and storage of the boots. So basically, from what they say, as long as you wear your boots, you're gonna be fine. But if you do let them sit, some of that moisture, especially if you're in a really humid climate, is gonna get into those little cells and cause them to crumble. So just wear your boots. And it's kind of the same with leather. If you let leather sit in your closet for 5 years, it's gonna dry out, and the first time you wear it, it's gonna be a lot more fragile and start cracking. Footwear needs care. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Just wear your boots and they'll be fine. But a lot of people freak out about it, so pretty cool of Blundstone to reach out about those things. So now that we got that covered and kind of went through all Blundstone stuff, let's cut them in half and see what's inside of them. like a hot knife through butter. Shout out to that guy who suggested putting a little oil on the bandsaw blade. Made it way easier. Let's see what's inside. So, pretty interesting. They're basically identical on the inside. I thought maybe the TPU outsole would be a little thicker on the 550s, but it's exactly the same. I guess that's no surprise. The price difference is only $10. I don't really know why they have these two different versions of the boots. Like, why not just have one if they're so similar? Kind of interesting. One thing I don't like is the lining on the inside in the toe box area near the vamp. It's kind of a felted fabric, and this stuff won't last as long as leather. Maybe it's a little more breathable than leather, but I'd almost rather see no lining in the vamp than this stuff. Let's tear out the rest of the insides of these and see what else is going on, but I think they're pretty much identical. Got them all torn apart and laid out here, and yeah, it's basically the same all the way through. Not a whole lot of difference. Obviously, the liner's a little bit different. It's got the exact same steel shank, the same insole, the same outsole, the same counter. Everything's exactly the same except for the leather and the liner. But other than that, it's exactly the same. So when it comes down to it, is it worth $10 extra? For sure. Like $10 extra for a slightly better leather and a lining. Spend the money, don't buy the 500s. Spend an extra $10 or $20 and buy the 550s. I was hoping it had a little bit thicker TPU sole on it, but turns out that's not the case. So if you're trying to decide between the two, get the 550s. They're not gonna be that much warmer or hotter. Just this little thin piece of leather is not gonna make a huge difference. So get the higher quality leather, get the liner, and you'll be happier with the 550s for sure. Are these boots worth the money? I don't love that they're not resolable. It's kind of hard to invest that kind of money in a boot that you can't resole. 200 bucks is a lot of money. So for me, the comfort might be worth it, but the price is pretty steep for a non-resolable boot. But a lot of people, just like the Doc Martens and the Timberland, you're buying these because they're Blundstones, not because of the value necessarily. I don't think they're gonna break down prematurely as long as you're wearing the boots and you're taking care of the leather. Yeah, I think they're worth the money if you're dying to get a pair of Blundstones. I don't know if you can hear that rumbling outside, but apparently there's a rodeo going on. That pretty much wraps it up. Next, we've got the ASMR Supercut on Friday, and I've been wearing these. Oh, you can't really see them. These are redbacks. Some of you diehards have been suggesting these like crazy. I got a pair, and I've been wearing them. And I gotta say, they might be more comfy. So, stay tuned for that video, and thanks for watching. Hopefully this answers all the questions about the Blundstones. We're gonna compare them to the redbacks pretty soon, and if you like this, be sure to like and subscribe and comment, because it makes a huge difference, and these boots are pricey. Like I said earlier, spent over $2 grand on all these boots and shoes I've torn apart, so every little bit you can do to help is very, very appreciated. So thank you so much. See ya.
The first video